quarantine, we take a look at the high rate of exposure among Arizona's House delegation.
Plus, how an alternative to nasal swabs, developed right here in Arizona, could make testing for COVID-19 much easier.
And later this half hour on Break It Down, the 3 pandemics hitting the Black community.
Cronkite News starts now.
Good evening and welcome to Cronkite News on Arizona PBS. I'm Kelsey Calasi.
And I'm Maithili Gubbi. Thank you for joining us.
COVID-19 is the leading cause of death in the United States this week. That's according to the University of Washington's Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation. In a news release today, IHME said daily deaths in the last week increased to an average of 1,660 per day, up from 1,470 the previous week. Second to COVID-19 is heart disease. A distant third is lung cancer. It's important to note, IHME made its calculations by assuming uniform deaths of non-COVID causes throughout the year.
Here in Arizona, health authorities reported 5,680 new coronavirus cases, the second most ever, with 64 additional deaths. It was the third day this week with more than 5,000 new cases reported, a mark that has never been previously reached. And a new model out today paints a staggering picture of United States COVID deaths in the coming months. The Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation projects more than 500,000 COVID deaths by April. The data suggests daily deaths will peak in the range of 3,000 in mid-January, before gradually falling. The model covers primarily the period before vaccines are expected to be widely available to the public. But even with a rapid vaccine rollout, it only predicts a reduction in the number of deaths by about 11,000. The model argues that if everyone wore masks, more than 66,000 American lives could be saved.
Right now, Arizona's largest public school system is transitioning to online learning for the first 2 weeks of the spring academic semester. The decision came after Mesa Public Schools reached the red zone in 2 COVID metrics out of 3. The 3 COVID metrics are cases per 100,000 people, percent positivity, and COVID-like illnesses. So, for the remaining weeks of the fall semester, Mesa will make decisions on a case-by-case basis. But no school as of now will be going back to the classroom at the start of next semester. Mesa will follow the remote learning model until January 15th, 2021. At that point, they'll reevaluate if they're able to open safely. Until then, they'll still provide services such as student meals and Explore.
Congress has already gone remote, sort of. Most hearings are a combination of virtual and in-person witnesses. And the House is allowing floor votes by proxy for the first time in its history. But it's not been a foolproof safeguard, as I found out with Arizona's Congressional delegation.
4 of Arizona's House members have been in quarantine because they either tested positive for COVID-19 or may have been exposed to the virus. That's almost half of the state's House delegation.
My job is one where I have to meet with people, where I have to go out in public, and I also have to fly on a plane to get to Washington, D.C.
Debbie Lesko, the Republican congresswoman from Peoria, home quarantined last month after she was exposed to someone who tested positive for COVID. But she says that as a member of Congress, it's hard to take precautions against the virus.
People want to come, they naturally just want to come up and talk to me, and they're usually right in my face. So I can't really control if people are going to wear masks or not.
So far, 70 members in the House have either tested positive for COVID or quarantined because of possible exposure.
Well, unfortunately, the House and Senate have not developed a uniform safety standard like any employer of their size. There's 15,000 people working on the Capitol campus.
Arizona's House delegation has the highest percentage of quarantined members in the country. In addition to Lesko, Representatives Paul Gosar and David Schweikert also quarantined, and Congressman Raul Grijalva tested positive for COVID. In a statement released after he tested positive, Grijalva said that he would not blame anyone directly, but, quote, numerous Republican members routinely strut around without a mask to selfishly make a political statement. Representatives Grijalva and Ann Kirkpatrick from Tucson are the only two Arizonans who have voted by proxy because of the pandemic.
As soon as COVID broke, it was months ago, I caught the first flight out. I took it seriously.
Kirkpatrick left D.C. and closed her offices to the public and made operations remote.
So it's serious. We're trying to do everything we can to get the message out to people, to take every precaution necessary. And I personally am trying to lead by example.
She urges people to stay socially distant, as difficult as it may be.
It's been tough. I'm a people person. I like my colleagues. I always spend time on the House floor talking with a group of colleagues.
Lesko says it's important to follow health guidelines, but disagrees with the Democrats' decision to allow proxy votes.
We actually think if nurses and doctors and grocery store workers and everybody else has to go to work, I think members of Congress should have to go to work too.
Even though many of them are remote, the Congress has a full plate in its remaining few weeks, including possible votes on a new COVID relief package and approving a budget by next Friday to head off a possible government shutdown.
President-elect Joe Biden says the coronavirus pandemic is dominating his transition into the White House, and his approach to the pandemic will be different from the way the Trump administration has dealt with the deadly disease. After Biden takes office, he will call on Americans to help slow the spread of COVID-19 by wearing masks for 100 days.
I'm going to ask the public for 100 days to mask. Just 100 days to mask. Not forever, 100 days. And I think we'll see a significant reduction.
Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris say they'll get a COVID-19 vaccination once one is approved and deemed safe, and they want frontline workers like doctors and nurses to get vaccines as well.
Several former commanders-in-chief are also volunteering to get an approved vaccine to help promote its safety and encourage others to do the same. Former Presidents Barack Obama, George W. Bush, and Bill Clinton have all agreed to get it, and they'll do it on camera. Right now, Moderna's vaccine is about a week behind. The plan, once approved, vaccinate 20 million Americans in December, 30 million in January, and 50 million in February.
Meanwhile, Arizona is using saltwater mouthwash instead of nasal swabs to collect COVID-19 samples. Cronkite News reporter Melissa Zarimba gives us the details about this test that's easier to administer, especially in younger patients.
Researchers at the University of Arizona are collecting COVID-19 samples by using a saltwater solution mouthwash as an alternative to nasal swabs.
You just give a person a little vial of salt water, and they squirt that into their mouth, swish it around, and then spit it into a little funnel tube.
The process is much more tolerable for patients.
The salt water it's really quick and easy. For it, the way I run it, it's 5 seconds of swishing, 10 seconds of gargling 3 times through. So it's, less than a minute and you have your sample.
Warby heard about the test after reading a paper by a group of researchers in British Columbia.
The saline method turns out to be much more sensitive. Like it seems to detect the virus in about 30% more patients than the nasopharyngeal swab.
Right now, the saltwater mouthwash is just for research, but Warby hopes one day this could become a public way to test for COVID-19. Melissa Zarimba, Cronkite News.
Coming up on Cronkite News, border wall battle. Find out why environmentalists are concerned about the wall's impact on wildlife reserves.
And athletes making a difference. We'll explain how major sports stars are coming together to help fight youth hunger next.
There's never been a more important time to make sure facts and the truth are driving conversation. Washington Week is an island of civil discourse in a chaotic media environment. On Friday nights, we gather the best reporters in the nation to unpack what's really happening and have a conversation that's not about point of view, but about informing the American people.
Washington Week. All new, Friday night at 7 on Arizona PBS.
The U.S.-Mexico border wall is continuing to go up quickly, affecting a number of Arizona wildlife reserves and concerning environmentalists. Cronkite News reporter Kylie Cochran shows us one environmental step the U.S. Customs and Border Patrol is taking. But is it enough?
Right now, they're blasting through wilderness areas in the Paloncillo Mountains, Guadalupe Canyon. They are blasting through the Pajarito Mountains.
All for one of the largest public works projects in American history, the border wall.
This is one of the most biologically diverse places in North America, and it's a critical crossroads on the North American continent.
Miles Trapphagen, a Borderlands program coordinator for Wildlands Network, said the 30-foot tall steel structure affects more than just human migration.
The impacts that go along with this are related to just directly walling off migration routes for a lot of wildlife species.
These are a series of motion-activated wildlife cameras installed by the nonpartisan environmental group in Arizona's San Bernardino Valley. They observe the wall's impact on jaguars and javelina.
In fact, people refer to San Bernardino Refuge as a pig farm because there was just so many javelina there. And now they're becoming more rare.
But the wall doesn't just affect larger animals.
The natural inclination is to think about, okay, of course a bird is just going to fly over the wall. And it doesn't matter if it's 4 meters or 9 meters tall. And if it.
Aaron Flesch is a researcher at the University of Arizona. He studied the impact of human infrastructure on pygmy owls.
These animals can't physically fly over a border wall. It's just like so many other critters that these landscape features create kind of a behavioral barrier, if you will.
Customs and Border Protection has announced they're building 43 small animal wildlife passages along 63 miles of the Tucson Wall sector.
Well, the wildlife passages that they're talking about are really, I would call them absurd.
The wall is the size of this piece of printer paper, just 8.5 by 11 inches.
According to a CBP statement, the purpose of the passages is to allow for larger animals to pass through. Flesch considers the passages to be a step in the right direction.
But it will help some things like quail and roadrunners and maybe turkeys and maybe smaller tortoises. The issue with that is that they need to be frequent enough in space to foster that kind of exchange.
Flesch and Trapphagen agree that the bigger issue is the 2005 Real ID Act. The law concerns security, but includes waiving regulations that interfere with construction of physical barriers at borders. The Department of Homeland Security is using it to waive dozens of environmental laws during the wall's construction.
Really destroying an environmental treasure here and basically altering the evolutionary history of North America with these border walls.
The wall's long-term effects on wildlife still remain to be seen. Kylie Cochran, Cronkite News.
The CBP has announced an additional 50 wildlife passages on top of the 43 already going up in the Tucson sector. They're expected to be completed by the end of 2020.
Fans of college football have been patiently waiting to see their favorite teams take back on the field. But fans will need to wait a little longer to see those teams play in person. For their 50th anniversary, the 2021 Fiesta Bowl will take place, but there will be no fans in the stands. Only immediate family members of players will be allowed in attendance. Fiesta Bowl officials made this decision based on recommendations from the Arizona Department of Health Services to limit the spread of COVID-19. Mike Neely, the executive director of the Fiesta Bowl organization, said, quote, "While we are disappointed that the PlayStation Fiesta Bowl will not have fans in the stadium to enjoy bowl season this year, we respect the decisions made by local authorities."
COVID-19 is affecting people from all walks of life, but for those who are already struggling with poverty, the effects of the virus can be devastating. Sarandon Raboyne finds out how some Arizona athletes are pitching in to help.
There are rows upon rows of empty seats this season that are normally filled with fans due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The average football stadium seats around 70,000 spectators, about the same number of children who were left unsponsored in Compassion International's humanitarian aid program.
This is a stadium. We know what 70,000 looks like at this park or that park. And if you can imagine, number one, that being 70,000 children, and then number two, that being empty. and really realizing we need the support for each of those children is kind of what we're saying is populating that stadium one child at a time.
Compassion International is teaming up with professional athletes from all sports to help fill the stadium with sponsored children in the most poverty-stricken areas of the world.
When you break down financially how it works for a 4-person family, for example, a mom and dad and 2 kids to go to an NFL game on a Sunday, it's going to cost you about $500. That $500 can sponsor a child to sit in that stadium and sponsor a child for an entire year and pay for a kid's food, clothing, water.
These athletes aren't just highlighting the program on their social media, they are financially contributing to the cause as well.
The cool thing about this initiative is all the players and athletes are going first. It's not just something we're talking about, it's something we're supporting ourselves.
Nick Ahmed had already contributed $75,000 into this personally, and then added $25,000 more as a challenge gift to try to encourage fans to match and get involved. Carson Palmer made a commitment to $300,000 towards this. That's also a challenge match.
This aid is critical. These children are on the brink of starvation due to the pandemic, since their parents can't go to work to make enough money to buy food and are struggling financially.
When their families are forced to stay home and their parents or whoever is taking care of the kids are having to stay home, they don't have supplies at home. They don't have extra food laying around. They don't have clean water to drink. So the shutdown affects them even more than it would affect us.
Currently, the initiative has filled a little over 16,000 seats or sponsored 16,000 children. But they have the goal to fill the entire stadium by the Super Bowl, which is scheduled to take place on February 7th.
We've seen a lot of progress, and we'd love to invite people to help us little by little, just fill one seat. Just get your soccer team to fill one seat. Get your family to fill one seat, or give $25 towards filling one seat.
With the holidays right around the corner, it's the perfect time to give back to those in need. Reporting for Cronkite News, I'm Serena Raboyne.
You can contribute to the Fill the Stadium initiative by going to fillthestadium.com or following them on social media. That's it for Cronkite News tonight. Thanks for joining us.
For top Arizona stories anytime, go to cronkitenews.azpbs.org.